Hello, darling. It's often been said that we can't go home again. We have to appreciate what we have in the present, because before we know it, the world moves on, and what we have today becomes a memory. Unfortunately, it's sometimes the case that truly special things come into our lives when we're too young to appreciate them, or can even try to hold on to them. Tonight, I'd like to speak of an example of this from my own life. Please join me now in my memories of a very strange place, the upstairs lounge. My father cleaned nightclubs for a living, starting when I was about 6 years old. He would leave before dawn, spend all day at it, and then be done in time to pick me up from school. Sometimes, during Christmas and summer breaks, my mother and I would go along with him. Both of them working meant the job could be done in half the time, or better yet, twice as many jobs could be taken on. And, with me there as well, there was no need to arrange for childcare. You might think a nightclub during the day would be an odd environment for a child, and yes, I suppose it was. But the truth is that I enjoyed these times tremendously. Typically, it was only the three of us present. My father would do the hardest jobs, like cleansing the disgusting restrooms, while my mother would take on the lighter work, like wiping down mirrors and cleaning up behind the bar. For my part, I could have all the soda and peanuts I wanted. My parents would also turn on the sound and light systems while they worked, which helped the hours go by and made it enjoyable for all of us. Nightclubs can be fascinating places for children to explore. I found all sorts of jewelry, watches, and so forth, which of course we did our best to return. Sometimes we found cash, and if it was a small amount, we kept it. This was the 1980s, so many of the bars had arcade games for me to play. I still loved the sit-down Miss Pac-Man. There was pinball, too. My favorite was called Haunted House. One club had a whole wall that was a 1940s Chicago street scene, with a bar, phone booth, and restrooms built into it, like an interactive backdrop. During the holidays, Christmas lights were set up on the faux fire escapes, and trees were put in the windows of the apartments above the street. Oh, that was great fun to play on, and something children would normally never see. I know a lot of people today enjoy watching nightclub videos from the 1980s online, and so do I, because I feel like I was there. Especially when I see people in those videos with really outrageous hair, but who are dressed simply and just look confident and like they're having fun, enjoying their youth. It reminds me of my parents and the people they knew, people who were safe grown-ups to me, and who were nice to me. It was so long ago, but I treasure those memories. My dad picked up many new places to clean over the years, and sadly I think every last one of them is gone now. The last one to go, just a few years back, was the most special to me. It was in an old building downtown, one that had deteriorated, but still had many beautiful Art Deco flourishes on its exterior. Back in those days, the front of the building on the ground floor was a small diner that was always busy. It was near the auditorium and the main theater, and so the diner was often patronized by famous actors, singers, dancers, and wrestlers, with the nightclub in the space behind the diner. This was easily the smallest place my dad cleaned, so he never really needed help with it. It was therefore quite a while before my mother and I ever tagged along. The cleaning took no time at all with both of them on the job. I remember playing with my action figures on an elevated seating area as hits like Take On Me and Dance Hall Days and West End Girls played on the sound system. My parents wrapped up their work, put the supplies away, and powered down the sound and lights. But before we left, my dad beckoned us over to a small door in the corner behind another set of tables off to the side of the go-go platform. He opened the door with a key, revealing a broad staircase going up. The stairs were carpeted a deep emerald green with ornate wooden railings. There was a patterned wallpaper, too, though it was too dark to see it clearly. Natural light came from above. It was a complete change of atmosphere compared to the contemporary, trendy vibe of the club. "Come on," my dad said. He was smirking, which usually meant he was about to spring some private joke on us. My mum hesitated, as my dad's jokes usually weren't funny. I wouldn't be surprised if she expected the space beyond to be littered with something like pornographic images. That's the kind of thing my dad would find funny, subjecting her to that, knowing how uncomfortable it would make her. But no, he wouldn't have exposed me to such things. Not at 6 years old, anyway. So we went. We climbed the stairs, and in a moment we emerged into a beautiful mid-century lounge. To either side of the doorway was a wood-paneled wall decorated with photographs of celebrities and landmarks from the city's history. Before us were neatly arranged tables, chairs, and couches in emerald and sage greens, made with leather and natural woods, creating intimate areas for conversation and drinking. On the opposite wall was a fully stocked bar that spanned the whole room. The back of it was mirrored with green glass shelves and Tiffany-style lamps and green leather stools neatly lined up. To our left were windows looking out onto a busy downtown street, and, most impressively of all, to the right, along another paneled wall, was a massive panoramic photo, colorized, showing that same street outside as it was in the 1940s. Women with their hair in victory rolls led children by the hand. Men in suits tipped their hats, and streetcars, something long since vanished from the town, rushed past rows of parked cars in myriad colors. My dad explained this lounge had been closed up for decades, but had been thrown in when the owner bought the club downstairs. Thankfully, he liked the space so much that he left it as is, rather than modernizing it to match the club. The three of us walked through the lounge. I remember how loudly my dad's voice echoed, as did our footsteps. I carried a little duffel bag full of my blocks and action figures, and I clutched it to myself a bit more tightly. I looked at my mom, who was never good at hiding her emotions, and I could see at once that she felt the same as me. She was in awe of the space, how pretty it was, how unexpected, but there was also something unnerving about it that she couldn't pin down. I quickly moved over to her and took her hand, and she grabbed mine back. My dad pointed out things I wish we would have paid more attention to in the moment. Old-time magazines on a table, specific people and cars in the panoramic photo, the beauty of the furniture. He got me a drink of 7-Up from the bar. It wasn't exactly scary in the lounge. We weren't exactly in a hurry to leave. My mom and I were fascinated. My dad had never mentioned there was such a place as this. But finally, my mother said, "I don't think I'd want to come clean up here." My dad's smile cracked when he looked up at her and said, "Oh? Well, it's lovely, isn't it? But it's also, I don't know what." She looked around, grinning, but she shivered. "It's like I'm expecting someone to jump out of a corner." My dad smirked again, his eyebrows raising as he passed my mother a drink. "I know," he said quietly. "I was hoping you'd feel it too." As it happened, the upstairs lounge was rarely used. The nightclub was popular enough, but rarely so packed that an overflow crowd required them to open up the additional space. and since the popular music blasting downstairs couldn't be heard in the lounge, that negatively impacted its appeal. There were some people who preferred it up there and asked for access, but these customers were rare. And I imagine, when there was a happy group of patrons in the lounge, laughing and drinking with the barman at hand, the odd feeling probably went away. Still, for the most part, over the years the club was open, the lounge sat empty. There were several times as I got older when I joined my dad for his cleaning job. I think the last time was when I was about 11 or so. I remember sitting at the bar in the main club, drinking a soda pop, and wanting desperately to go up to the lounge. I wanted to explore it, flip through the magazines, study the historic photos along the back wall, inspect the detailed scene in the panorama. My dad told me I could, that he'd left the door unlocked, yet I realized that I couldn't go up. I was afraid. Think about it like this. My dad was all the way down the steps, intent on his noisy work, vacuuming, scrubbing, with the music playing. If the sound system couldn't be heard across the barrier between club and lounge, then could my voice if I cried out? Whenever I thought about going up there, I imagined some large man grabbing me from behind, his meaty hand clamped over my mouth. A man in a dark green pinstripe suit, with a matching hat, his face hidden in shadows. He'd pull me back into the shadows with him, and that would be it. They'd find my empty glass, the ring of moisture it left on the table, and nothing more. As badly as I wanted to return, to sit in the beautiful green seats and feel the prickly strangeness of the lounge, the danger felt too real to me. I couldn't risk it. The old diner and nightclub finally closed around the time I started college. Various restaurants took over the space that used to be the diner, plus the front half of the nightclub. The back half of the nightclub, as well as the second floor where the lounge was sealed off. I'm sure there was still access to it from somewhere, but not through the main entrance anymore. I went to a few of those restaurants as an adult. The last one was a Cajun place. The bar that my mother had cleaned was still there, though it now served a different purpose as a counter within the restaurant, and I could clearly see where the door leading to the lounge should be, but it was walled over, smooth, indicating nothing of the staircase behind it. During these years, if I was downtown at night, I'd make a point to pass by that old building and look up to see if there were any lights on where the lounge would be. There never were. I began to develop a fantasy around this. Could the upstairs lounge truly be bricked up and forgotten? If so, what might go on in there, in a place that no living person ever sees? Perhaps, when the street below was empty, the lounge came to life, with either jazz or big band tunes playing. Maybe flappers smoked brazenly, nasally swinging their long chains of beads, their lips painted bright red. Or maybe couples swing danced, soldiers in uniform and ladies in long skirts. Maybe some nights the air filled with chill xylophone music, and women with big hair and fur coats moved among men in suits with the easy smiles of paid-for politicians. Regardless, I imagine there was always one figure in green pinstripes who lurked in the shadow, making sure that the playtime of the patient dead was not disturbed by the ever-selfish living. Someday, if the building was ever renovated, would someone break through a thin layer of masonry and rediscover the lounge, pristine aside from the dust? Imagine their shock, if so. I could see the workmen, slack-jawed, picking up the old issues of Time magazine with Betty Grable and General Eisenhower on their covers, large men looking small in the vast, swirling columns of light that poured in through the windows. A discovery like that would make the news. Maybe I'd get to see the lounge again, because this was my fondest wish, to see it again, to sit in that space, to feel the strange prickle that it had made me feel, that awe and curiosity mixed with a twinge of fear. I was a grown-up now, and not nearly so superstitious as my younger self, or as my parents had been. I wanted to know the lounge, to test it, to see what would happen if I dared it, pushed it, and if it still existed, forgotten, buried in dust, then perhaps I would still get my chance. Of course, it was not to be. Not because the building was torn down, as I had long feared it would be, but because it and its neighbors were lovingly restored. It just happened a few years ago. The outside was redone, with the building's streamlined modern elements brought back to life one by one, rather than scrubbed away, as I expected. And the interior was completely gutted, floor by floor, wall to wall. A new restaurant moved into the ground floor, while the upper floors were converted into apartments. If by some chance the upstairs lounge had survived this long, then no mention of it was made in the local press. But I doubt it really did. I've looked at the apartment layouts, and from what I can gather, the space that was the lounge is now the kitchen, dinette, and living room of one spacious and lovely two-bedroom unit. I have a feeling that the frightening gangster is gone, if he ever really existed. But it wouldn't surprise me if the new occupants are sometimes awakened by the sounds of laughter and conversation in the middle of the night, perhaps the tinkling of glasses too. Walking out into their main room, of course they'll find nothing, just their own familiar furniture waiting for them in the quiet dark. Except maybe one night that won't be the case. Maybe they'll be tapped on the shoulder and, turning in shock, find themselves face to face with a beautiful cigarette girl in a green sequined mini dress, her bobbed hair pressed into finger waves. She'll glitter like stars, made up like a silent movie vixen, and offer something from her tray. "Are you members?" she'll ask. "If so, take what you like." Would you take something? I know I would. Maybe some cigarettes, or matches, or peanuts, or just a little piece of eternity. I think the upstairs lounge, like the haunted house described in an earlier story, frightened me because it was so clearly a place out of time, something which the young me had not often encountered. But there was more to it than just that. As my parents identified, there was a sense that the lounge was occupied, that someone was there, just outside of view. It felt like if you could only turn your back fast enough, you were bound to see them. I hope the lounge was haunted by people who had a good time there. Wouldn't you like to think that sometime in the future, the spirits of you and your best friends might gather for one last round, one last game of cards, one last dance? I certainly would. On cold nights when I feel alone, few things would warm me more than the promise that we'll all be together again in a place that was special to us, whether it's still standing today or not. Until next time, don't forget me. N'est-ce pas?